Next, we're going to talk about something called chain of thought prompting, which is certainly interesting. However, it's not something that I use day to day, but it's fascinating. So the concept here is that there's a paper, there's actually quite a few papers released on this concept about using specific phrasing and specific techniques to prompt a model to be able to solve more complex reasoning problems by generating a chain of thought with intermediate steps along the way. So by providing, in this example, this is one of the early papers on this topic, simple like textbook math problems, word problems for elementary students. The cafeteria had 23 apples. If they used 20 to make lunch and bought 6 more, how many do they have? Certain models get that wrong. But then in this chain of thought version over here, let's see if I can zoom in a bit, the prompt is a little different. It starts with a question and then an answer. So this is a one-shot prompt, right? There's an example. Here's a question, here's a corresponding answer. But instead of just saying the answer is 11, the answer now says the answer is 11, but it also has an explanation of the reasoning, step-by-step thought process. Roger started with 5. 2 cans of 3 tennis balls means you have 6. 5 plus 6 equals 11. And then we can prompt it for the next step, and it continues with this chain of thought process where it actually provides the reasoning. So we don't have to do all of this. What we can actually do is just use the phrase think step by step, or explain your reasoning step by step, or provide a chain of your thoughts. That sort of prompting can actually make a significant difference. All right, so I'm going to show you an example here. I am going to use GPT 3.5 because most of the examples from the research papers that are out there, the blog posts on chain of thought prompting, are not a problem anymore for GPT-4. So I'm going to go to 3.5 on purpose to try and generate something that it gets wrong. So I'm going to ask a simple question. What is the 4th word in the phrase, or I'm not even going to give it a real phrase. I'm just going to put some words in here. I am not that, what, not you. And the 4th word should be 1, 2, 3, 4, that. And it didn't get it right. The 4th word in the phrase, I am not that, what, not you, is not. It's telling me the answer is not, which is not correct, right? That's the 3rd word in the phrase. So what I can do is simply add think step by step, explain your reasoning step by step, show me a chain of thought, and that should be enough to change the output and not only give me the right answer, but give me an explanation. So I'll just say think step by step. There's not a lot of steps here, but you can see it breaks it down, and it does result in the correct answer. The 4th word in the phrase is that, which is correct, right? 1, 2, 3, 4. So it gives me a full explanation, which is kind of silly. I don't need the explanation, but by asking it to explain itself step by step, it arrives at the right answer, where before it wasn't giving me the right answer. So it's, like I said, I think it's fascinating. These are silly examples where I like to use think step by step, or things like explain your reasoning step by step, is when I'm giving some sort of complex command where there's not a right or wrong answer, but instead I want it to explain what it is doing, what it's thinking, quote unquote thinking, as I give it a prompt. So here's an example of what I mean. I'm going to ask GPT, well, I guess I'm using 3.5 here. Maybe I should use 4 to get a better result. But either way, I'm using a model to write me a blog post. I want you to act as an expert web development instructor, course creator, and blog writer. You are an expert on topics related to web dev, coding, AI, and technical interviews. You are creating a blog post on how to prepare for coding interviews. I'll say, write me an abstract of 100 to 200 words, and then write the entire blog post. The new thing is that I'm then going to say, explain or provide a step-by-step explanation of your reasoning for every decision you make. So let's see what happens here. Why don't I do this in GPT-4, by the way? Okay, GPT-4, I'm running the same prompt. So nothing all that exciting, except what's new is I'm telling it to provide a step-by-step explanation for its reasoning. So let's see what it does. It gives me the abstract about, cracking the coding interviews, what it's going to cover. Readers will be equipped with a framework to conquer any coding challenges. Oh, look, it decided to give me Markdown. I didn't even ask for that, but it formats it as Markdown. It writes the blog post. I'll be back when it finishes. Okay, so it finished the blog post. Now it's giving me the reasoning that I asked for. So you could also reverse the order. You could say, before you write the post, give me a step-by-step explanation of your reasoning. But now it's giving me this explanation. The structure of the blog post is designed to offer a comprehensive view of the preparation process for coding interviews. Each section highlights a particular area of preparation, backed by specific resources and strategies. The goal is to guide the reader through a systemic and efficient preparation process, and so on. So if I find something that I'm not happy with in its thought process, in its reasoning here, by telling it to explain the reasoning to me, it's clear, right? I can see what its goals were and how it was reasoning, what decisions it was making. Like I said, I don't use this all the time. It's more of just an interesting prompting technique, but this is something that we can do. At any point, you can ask it to provide a step-by-step explanation of its reasoning. Next up, we have a very simple, I hesitate to even call it a technique, but sure, a simple technique for prompting ChatGPT that involves providing a specific cue. By cueing it exactly where we want it to respond or where we want it to start its response. Sometimes you may want to alter the output that you're getting. For example, if I ask it to generate me a list of dog names, it doesn't always do this, but I could ask it something like, I don't even know if we want to do dog names. Sure, generate me a list of fantasy-inspired dog names for a male dog. A lot of the time it'll say, sure, here's a list, or I can do that. I'm excited to help you, or something, and then it will actually start the list. And honestly, it's not a big deal if it does that. But if I want to explicitly cue it, I can. And I can say, instead of just generate me a list of dog names, I can say, generate me a list of dog names for a male dog, and then start your list here. And I can even give it a bullet point. And there we go. It just starts immediately. Now that's a simple example, but there's a lot of these situations where you may get the exact output you want, plus a little preamble at the beginning that you maybe don't want. And you can just ignore it, sure. But if you want to eliminate that, if you're doing something where you have a very specific output that you're looking for, you can cue it and tell it start on this bullet point, or start with this number if you wanted to. If I stop this generating, start your list here. And it will just begin with a numbered list. And we've seen this sort of thing before in a much simpler example, right? When we did sentiment analysis, we did something like classify the sentiment of the following text. And then we could have an input example like, I hate you. And then the output is clearly going to be negative. And then I can give it input again. And the input will be, hello, I am in love with you. And I can prompt it exactly where I can give it a cue where I want it to put the output. In this way, I'm hoping, and this is usually the case, it's not going to go on a whole spiel and try and explain to me, oh, I think that's mostly positive, and here's why. If I just want the word positive, I'm cueing it. Now compare that to if I didn't provide the output, it's going to copy my format and actually write the word output. And it's not a big deal here, but if I'm doing this programmatically, if I'm using a large language model API where I need to just get a value out, I'm using something with some sort of code, then this is unnecessary. And I probably just want the specific value, positive, negative, or neutral. So this is just another example of queuing the model with some sort of starter piece of text. Put your text after this. You can often use colons, bullet points, an asterisk or a dash to make a bullet point, a numbered list, or just the word output or response, and it will fill in that blank. So next, we're going to take a look at a pretty niche use case, but also a really fun visual use case for ChatGPT. We're going to generate mind maps. So ChatGPT can't directly generate a visual mind map like you see here, but this tool is called markmap.js.org, markmap, generates mind maps based off of markdown syntax. So it's super easy to do. There's an example here on the left, but I'm actually going to just do an even simpler example. If I want to have some mind map for any sort of hierarchy-based structure, so any outline, any list of concepts, maybe for this course. So I could do a mind map using headings. So this is the syntax. I could do course, content. And then I have my next level, which is 2 headings, so 2 hash symbols. And then I can have the intro section. And then I could have another section called Prompt Engineering, for example. And then within each of these categories, I then can define a different level of nesting. So the third tier down would have 3 levels of headings, so 3 hash symbols. And I could have, welcome. And then maybe we also have, installation. And then under prompt engineering, we have basic concepts for prompt engineering, like the prompt formula. And then we'll put one more thing under prompt engineering. How about, what's another prompt tactic we've learned? How about act as prompting? Anyway, this syntax generates the mind map you can see over here. So this is a tool someone has built on top of Markdown. We have to follow these rules to make the mind map. But we can use ChatGPT to generate way more complex mind maps if we tell it about this syntax. So this is an example where we probably would want to use one or few shot prompting, because I can't really just tell it, generate me a Markdown mind map. It's not going to know the pattern. This is not something that is, generic Markdown. This syntax is Markdown, but it probably would try generating a nested bullet point list maybe. So what we need to do is just tell it, this is the format we want. So that's exactly what I'll do. I'll say, generate me a mind map, or you are a mind map creating assistant, or something like that. We'll come back to this. But then I'm going to provide it an example. The mind map tool I'm using expects mind maps in this Markdown format. Here is an example for a mind map of, what should we do? Should we just use this example? Sure, we'll call this a mind map of a ChatGPT course curriculum. And then I'll give it this here. And then down below, I'll say generate a mind map for all of the concepts. What should we do? All the concepts a entry-level developer should learn. Entry-level web developer. Using the above syntax. Okay. So we may want to tweak this a bit, but here is what I want it to do. Generate me a mind map according to the format below. The mind map tool I'm using, oops, I misspelled accepts. I think I meant to say accepts mind maps in this Markdown format. Here's an example for a mind map of a ChatGPT course curriculum. And then here's the example. Then I'm going to tell it, use that format to generate me a mind map using that syntax for all of the concepts an entry-level web developer should learn. And let's see if it can figure it out. Okay, so it's generating me quite a bit. I'll be back when it's done. It's probably going to be a long one. Okay, it finished up. So now what I can do is copy this out of here and head over to my Markdown document, or to this tool, get rid of the text at the beginning. And here is my mind map. Can I shrink this down? How do I view just the map? Oh no. Okay, here we go. It may be a pretty big map, as you can see here, of all these different concepts. You've got to learn CSS. And within CSS, there's the intro, there's syntax, selectors, box model, layout. It's pretty good. However, one thing I'm noticing, it only went 3 levels deep. And this is an example of one of the possible downfalls of using a few shot or one shot prompting approach, where it's adhering too much to my example, because the example I gave it had exactly 3 levels. So I have a hunch that if I had given it an example where I had a 4th level in here, so we have course welcome, installation, maybe I'll rewrite this, I'll just fast forward. All right, so I drafted a more nested example that I can use. Instead of just the 3-tiered system, I now have up to 5 tiers. Just to give it a more complex example, this is what it looks like, but it doesn't really matter. This is purely to act as an example. So it shows, an OpenAI course where there's a tier generating text, generating images. Within generating text, we have another tier, and then within that, we have another tier. And anyway, it doesn't really matter what I put in there. It should make some sense, but I have a feeling now if I provide this as my example, that it's going to give me a better result, or at least a more nested result. So let's see. That finished up. Let's copy it and see what it actually looks like. Get rid of that at the beginning. Okay. And it is definitely more nested now, right? So we have 1, 2, 3, at least 4 levels, looks like 5 levels in our nested hierarchy. So it took to heart my example, which is, again, is great that we can do that. You just have to be careful with the examples you provide because sometimes it will adhere too closely. But what I could also have just said, most likely, is create a mind map with between 4 and 6 levels of nesting. And it probably could have figured that out too. Anyway, this is a fun one, an example both of working with Markdown, but also of, in this case, one-shot prompting, showing it a format that it doesn't know about, but it's picking up, no problem. Cool stuff. Maybe it's not the most useful of all the prompts, but it's a fun one, and it illustrates a lot of the concepts we've learned so far. Another thing we can do when writing prompts that is pretty straightforward is just asking for responses from multiple perspectives. There's nothing stopping us from getting 2 or 3 or 4 different outputs at once. And we can do the same thing with intended audiences. So I could say, write me 2 tweets from a perspective of a pastor and a father of 2, and then another from the perspective of a college student. Or I could flip it around and say, write me a blog post or a YouTube video script geared towards complete beginners in Python, intermediates in Python, and experts in Python. And it has no trouble doing that. It's a pretty simple, I don't even know if it's really a technique, but something you can keep in mind. The audience and the actual model's perspective. And you can provide multiple of those. So instead of just a single perspective, well, you can do more than one. So I'll do a quick example. Let's stay with the tweet theme. So write me a tweet about sailing around the world. As I've already mentioned, that's my dream goal, from the following perspectives. And then I can specify as many as I want. You know, a old grizzled sailor who has been around the world multiple times, a wealthy yacht owner, and then finally a college dropout sailing with friends in a small boat. And it will give me 3 tweets from 3 different perspectives. And here we go. Another day, another ocean horizon from the deck of my beloved yacht. And then the college dropout, dropped the textbooks to pick up the anchor with my buddies, a boat and a boatload of dreams we're redefining our classroom. And then the grizzled sailor is way over the top. But it works. And then I can do the same thing with the other direction as far as different audiences for a tweet or anything. I'll keep it with a tweet. Write me a tweet about sailing around the world for the following audiences. So write me a tweet, write me tweets. And our audience will be, complete novices. And then I'll also say expert sailors. 2 different audience. What? Okay, we're back. I don't know what that was. And now we get a tweet intended for complete novices and then one for experts. And I really didn't, give it specific information, just sailing around the world. Maybe we have a product that we're trying to sell. Like if we were trying to do something realistic here, maybe we're a sail company or a yacht charter company or a sailing school. Write me tweets about sailing around the world for the following audiences. Let's say you are the marketing director for a sailing school called Humpback Sailing. All right, we'll try that one more time. New to sailing, at Humpback Sailing, we can turn landlubbers into seasoned sailors. Imagine the wind, blah, 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 blah. So that's one. And then our next one is experts at sea. It's time to level up your sailing prowess with Humpback Sailing. Sharpen your skills. Prepare to tackle the toughest waves. So it does a pretty good job. And I didn't give it much to go off of. So a very simple concept here. You can ask the model to write from multiple perspectives and from multiple audiences. So another prompting technique that's kind of fun, but honestly sometimes I find to be overkill, is actually using ChatGPT to generate prompts for ChatGPT. So we can write a prompt that basically says, help me write a prompt to then feed to you, ChatGPT. I want you to make the most optimized, amazing prompt possible. And then, of course, we could say whatever sort of prompt we want, an essay writing prompt, a lesson plan prompt, a quiz creating prompt. And I've got a nice little diagram over here, a little image of the snake eating its own tail, feeding itself with the OpenAI logo. Kind of proud of that. I mean, it's two pieces of clip art stuck together, but still, it's a nice little visualization of what we're about to do. So I've written a prompt, I've pre-written it because it's a little bit long. It doesn't fit on a slide. I didn't want you to have to watch me type it. It's just a waste of time. But here it is. Please read all of the instructions below, and once you understand them, say, should we get started? We don't really have to do this, but I've seen a lot of prompts do this that have been posted on Reddit and Twitter, so we'll give it a shot. I don't think it makes much of a difference, but it's kind of a nice touch. Act as my prompt creating assistant. Your goal is to help me craft the best possible prompt for my specific task. The prompt you generate will then be used to prompt you, ChatGPT. Start by asking me what the prompt will be about. Follow up by asking me any additional questions needed to help you generate a better prompt. The goal here is to write the best possible prompt for the specific task I have in mind. Once you have all the information you need, you should output the final prompt. So it's a sort of interactive thing where I'm asking it to ask me for the prompt topic. What are my goals? Ask any follow-up questions. Let's try running this. What sort of prompt do we want it to generate? Okay, I'm ready to assist you in crafting the best possible prompt for your task. Let's begin with the basics. What is the general topic or subject of the prompt? Is there a specific outcome? Who is the audience? Are there any detail, style, tone? Do you have a preferred length for the prompt? Okay, so what kind of prompt do we want it to make us? Let's say I'm applying for jobs and I need a prompt to help me write cover letters. So what is the general topic or subject? I need a prompt that will generate cover letters. I'm applying to jobs and need help writing perfect cover letters. Question 2, is there a specific task? Yes, or outcome you're aiming for? So I wrote, the prompt should take all the information I provide about my career and the job I'm hoping to get, and it should generate a cover letter that lands me that job. Who is the intended audience for this prompt? I will be using this prompt. I am an, let's say, entry-level developer fresh from a coding bootcamp trying to get my first developer job. Okay, is there any particular detail, style, or tone? I'm just going to say whatever works best to make the best prompt. And then finally, do you have a preferred length? I just wrote, I don't care about the length of the prompt, make it as long as needed. Okay, so I've given it some information. It says, considering your objective, the prompt should ideally take inputs related to your personal background, the specifics of your training, your skills, the role you're applying to, and the company. With that in mind, here's the prompt. So all of that work is just to get me the prompt. Now here's the prompt. Please introduce yourself as an entry-level developer who recently graduated from a coding bootcamp. Include your key achievements, skills, and any projects you've completed that are relevant to the field. Explain why you're interested in the role you're applying for and what caught your attention about the company. Finally, highlight how your background and skills would make a significant contribution to the specific role and company at large. Please present this information in the form of a professional and persuasive cover letter. Okay. So it's written me this prompt. I'm not going to make you watch me actually use it and put a resume and job description and all of that. And it's okay. I will say that this technique, I think it's a lot of work and it doesn't lead to amazing results all the time. It's nothing bad. It feels like it's more fun as a technique than it is actually useful in my experience. If you know how to write a good prompt, the techniques, or at least the basic formula we covered early on, you can just use that. Provide a general initial context, provide a task, provide input data, provide formatting rules. You can write that yourself. And in this example, it's kind of given me a weird prompt, and maybe this is my fault, but please introduce yourself as an entry-level developer. I got too specific, maybe. I probably should have said, just write me a prompt for anybody applying to a job. Anyway, it will work. In the next video, I'll show you an even crazier version of this sort of prompt that I did not write, but is pretty popular online. Next, let's talk about some of the online prompting resources. There's a million different websites promising to have the best prompts, amazing 100 prompts that'll change your life, make you money, and all sort of scammy things. But there's also some very useful prompting resources, or at least possibly useful. So there's garbage out there, and there's some actual tools that have utility. And you just need to, pay attention to the right things. Because what you'll find is that there's tons of articles showing you 1,000 ChatGPT prompts, and they're just so specific and not very useful and very difficult to tailor to your own life that I don't recommend them at all. But there are lots of examples and lots of websites like this one, FlowGPT. This is probably the most popular. It is a place for people to share prompts. You can vote on prompts and copy them, of course, and try them. So we can find one like, a Facebook ad headline generating prompt. I'll click on it, and here's the prompt. You are a Facebook advertising expert. Your task is to create compelling ad headlines. I'll provide you with the name of a company and a brief description for a product. You'll generate the attention-grabbing Facebook ad headline. So let's try it. Just very quickly. So this example, the product is called Gadget Guru. Let's come up with a fake product called, Alpenglow Coffee. Okay, so here's my example. Alpenglow Coffee is a coffee shop and bakery set in the stunning Rocky Mountains of the town of Telluride. We offer pastries, sandwiches, blah, blah, blah. Let's just see what it generates me as a Facebook advertising expert. Escape to the mountains with Alpenglow Coffee, where fresh brews meet fresh views. Not too bad. Savor our handcrafted pastries today. Sure. Honestly, we could have written this, though. It's pretty straightforward, right? It's exactly what we've learned already. Set the context. What are you? You are a Facebook advertising expert. What is your task? Create a compelling ad headline. And then we provide the input data. It's pretty straightforward stuff. So I don't know if it's worth seeking all these prompts out. However, it can be fun to play around and to find, especially some of the higher upvoted ones. If you sort by most popular, there's some interesting thought-provoking prompts, like an unethical GPT that has the goal of trying to get ChatGPT to say anything, identify and provide solutions to some problems that involve unethical practices. Your task is to understand the client's. Anyway, it's a long prompt. And for these long ones, it could be nice to find an example. There's a lot of jailbreaking prompts where people are trying to get ChatGPT to basically break its rules. There's things like expertise to course. This prompt takes someone's expertise and turns it into an outline, I believe, for a course. There's a lot of prompts here. People are very excited about this, but also a lot of them are just kind of not that useful. Let's go to the most saved prompts, and let's take a look at this one, ChatGPT Prompt Improvement. So this is what I was referring to in the previous video where I talked about an even fancier version of a prompt generating prompt. So it provides some iterative instructions. It says, I want you to keep asking me to improve this prompt. You're going to give me a prompt and suggestions and questions, and then you'll give me different options. Let's see if it works. I'll say, yes, let's begin. Tell me what the prompt should be about. Let's try something different. I need a prompt to generate me an essay outline for my English class. Okay. So then it gives me an initial version of the prompt. As an AI, create a detailed essay outline on a topic for an English class. Suggestions. Mention the specific topic for the essay. Indicate the desired length of the essay. Any format restrictions. Questions. And then here's how I'm supposed to respond. I either, type use this prompt, and it will immediately use it. Type restart. Type quit. Or type option 1. Read the output and provide more info or answer to one of the. Okay, so I'll just do that. I'll read the output and provide answers to these questions. Okay, so I'll copy the questions and just answer them right here. Maybe I'll do a bullet point. What is the specific topic? Let's say that the essay is about, it's been so long since I wrote an essay in English class, about to kill a mockingbird. How long is the expected essay? At least 500 words. And are there any particular guidelines? It must be a 5-paragraph thesis style essay. Okay, so I respond, answer the questions, and now it gives me the revised prompt again. As an AI, create a detailed 5-paragraph essay outline for an English class on the topic of To Kill a Mockingbird, with the resulting essay to be at least 500 words. So it's kind of neat. It's, this iterative process where it's going to keep going and going until I tell it that I'm happy. But if you look at the actual prompt it wrote me, it would be way faster just to write this ourselves. It's just asking the same basic questions every time. What are the requirements? What are the format requirements for the output? Is there any additional context? These are all things we've already discussed that go into any good prompt, so we don't really need this to tell us that. We know that already. So it's fun, and I'm sure it can lead to some good results, but my opinion so far, I've tried this for, an hour over the last couple of days playing around, is that it just generates a prompt that you would be able to generate on your own anyway. So that's pretty much all I can say about it. There are other interesting prompt examples on here, but a lot of them end up being super specific, or they end up being really easy to just write on your own and maybe not that useful to copy and paste and steal. So I'm definitely not here to discourage you from using websites like this one. There's a lot of good inspiration here, and there's some fun stuff, especially around software development. If you look at any code-specific prompts, which we're not really covering in this section, there's some interesting stuff here. But it is not something that I recommend, spending all your time on. If you're trying to write a prompt, just write it. And then if you get stuck, see if you can find inspiration online. But I don't really recommend, using this as your starting point.